All right, so buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving deep into a case that's sending shockwaves across the country. We're talking about the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson and the arrest of Luigi Mangione.
Yeah, it's the kind of story that just grabs you and doesn't let go.
Exactly. And we're not skimping on the details here. We've got court documents, evidence reports, background info on Mangione, and even some of those, what do you call the public reactions, all that juicy stuff.
It's a real mix, that's for sure. And it all adds up to something much bigger than just a simple crime story. We're talking about, we're talking about anxieties, like these deep societal anxieties. You know?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like holding up a mirror to our times. But, okay, let's rewind for a sec. It all starts on December 4th, 2024. Thompson gets shot outside a fancy hotel in Manhattan, right?
That's right, outside a Manhattan hotel.
And Mangione, well, he's the one they slap with the second-degree murder charge.
And that's a serious charge, of course. We're talking 15 years to life, potentially.
15 to life? That's heavy stuff. But, and this is where it gets really interesting, there's been talk about upping it to first-degree murder.
Oh, yeah, that's a game changer. It all boils down to premeditation. Did Mangione plan this, or did it just, erupt in the heat of the moment?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because, I mean, we're talking 20 years minimum if it goes to first degree.
A big difference. And to make things even spicier, there's even whispers about potential terrorism charges.
Terrorism? Whoa, hold on a second. How did terrorism even enter the picture here?
Well, you got to think about it this way. Like, what's at the heart of a terrorism charge? It's the intent, right? The intent to scare the public or to use violence to influence government policy. And with all this evidence piling up, well, it starts to look like a very different kind of story, a very unsettling one.
Okay, all right, I'm with you. So let's talk evidence. What exactly ties Mangione to all this?
Buckle up. They found his fingerprints everywhere. On a water bottle near the scene, on a protein bar. Even more damning, his prints were on a cell phone right next to Thompson's body, and then boom! During the arrest, they find a 3D printed gun and a suppressor tucked away in his backpack. And guess what? Ballistics matched it to the murder weapon, no doubt about it.
It's almost like he wanted to be caught, leaving all those clues behind.
Right. It's a puzzle. On one hand, there's meticulous planning, but then there's this almost reckless disregard for hiding his tracks. It doesn't quite add up.
And then there's that notebook everyone's talking about. It's like his manifesto or something. Right?
Yeah, a handwritten notebook. And it's full of Mangione's rants. He's railing against corporate America, and specifically he's focusing on what he sees as these injustices in the healthcare system. It's disturbing stuff. But it does give you a peek inside his head, like what was going on in those days leading up to the murder. Anger, frustration. He even mentions that he considered using a bomb but decided on a shooting because, and get this, he wanted to minimize collateral damage.
That sends shivers down my spine. It makes you wonder, was this cold-blooded revenge or just a desperate cry for help that went horribly wrong?
There it is again, the question that haunts this whole case. Maybe the truth lies somewhere in the gray area, And then there's Mangione himself. He doesn't exactly fit the profile of a cold-blooded killer, does he?
Not even close. We're talking about a 26-year-old guy, got his master's in engineering from UPenn, worked at TrueCar, volunteered, even started like a video game club. Sounds like a pretty decent dude on the surface.
Yeah, decent dude. And from a good family, too. Prominent Maryland family, deep roots in real estate, and get this, healthcare. Not exactly the background you'd associate with this kind of violence.
So what went wrong? What could possibly push someone with so much potential, so much going for him, to allegedly commit murder?
Well, to understand that, we need to go deeper beyond the surface. We need to peel back the layers of Mangione's life. Maybe that's where the answers are hiding, or at least that's where we'll start to see how all these complex pieces fit together, how this tragedy unfolded.
I'm ready. Let's go.
So digging deeper, turns out Mangione had been dealing with this really bad back pain, like for a while. Apparently it started after a surfing trip, and it just kept getting worse. It got so bad he actually had to have spinal surgery in mid-2023.
Wow, that's a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
Especially for someone like Mangione, so young and active. It makes you think about the impact, not just physically, but emotionally too.
It's true. Chronic pain, it's not a joke. It can really mess with your head. Isolation, depression, that feeling of hopelessness, it can creep in. And then you throw major surgery into the mix, that's a whole other level of stress, the recovery alone.
And on top of all that, it sounds like his whole experience with the healthcare system during all this it just added fuel to the fire.
Oh, absolutely. His notebook, it's full of these rants about the healthcare industry, right? He's going off about insurance companies, all the red tape, how everything feels like it's about profit, not patients. It's like his own personal pain. It morphed into this huge anger at the whole system.
So we're talking about a guy in pain,
Right.
physically, emotionally. He's got this deep resentment towards the healthcare system. And then on top of it all, he's a brilliant guy, capable of planning something like this.
A recipe for disaster, right. And there's another piece to this. His family, they noticed he was becoming more and more isolated in the months before the murder. Yeah. His own mother, she actually filed a missing person report just before the shooting.
So not just a suspect, not just a name in the headlines. He was a son, a person going through something truly awful. It's just heartbreaking. So, okay, the shooting happens. What happens next?
Well, Mangione takes off, flees New York, he hops on a train, ends up in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Altoona. Why Altoona?
Your guess is as good as mine. Almost like he was trying to, I don't know, vanish. But the thing is, even his escape, it's got this weird sense of inevitability to it.
What do you mean?
He gets caught at a McDonald's.
McDonald's.
Seriously.
Seriously?
Some customer recognized him from the news, called the cops. At first, he's cooperative, talks to the investigators, but then he just shuts down, refuses to say another word.
Wow. Caught at a McDonald's, you couldn't write this stuff. Okay, so what about the legal side of things? Where do things stand now?
Well, he was extradited back to New York, no bail. He's sitting in jail waiting for his trial. And get this, his lawyer is still claiming he's innocent. Even with all that evidence stacked against him. It's a classic David and Goliath story, isn't it? This lone guy up against a giant corporation.
Then there's the public reaction. That's been a wild ride. Unexpected, to say the least.
For sure. It's been fascinating to watch, but kind of creepy too, you know? I mean, here's a guy accused of murder, a powerful CEO no less. And you've got people actually rallying behind him like he's some kind of hero.
It's like they're making you into a folk hero.
Exactly. They're raising money for his defense online, over $31,000 already. There's merch with his face on it, these slogans like CEO Hunter. It's surreal.
It's like people are, I don't know, taking their own frustrations, their anger, and projecting it all onto Mangione. They see him as someone who finally fought back against a system that they feel is rigged against them.
You've hit the nail on the head. This case, it's like it's tapped into this deep well of anger, this disillusionment. People are struggling, right? Healthcare costs are through the roof. They're drowning in debt. They see this huge gap between the rich and everyone else.
And with social media, well, it's like a pressure cooker for all that frustration.
No doubt about it. Suddenly you've got these complex issues boiled down to memes and sound bites, and suddenly a guy accused of murder, he becomes this symbol of rebellion. It's dangerous oversimplifying things like that, but it's also a symptom of something bigger, something wrong.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got this incredibly complex case, this brilliant young man seemingly driven to do something terrible. The evidence against him is overwhelming. And then there's the public, split between condemning him and this bizarre support. Where do we even begin to unpack all of this? What stands out to you the most? You know, for me, it's the contrast that's so jarring. I mean, on paper, Mangione had it all. Education, a loving family, he had a promising future, you know. But underneath all that, he was clearly hurting, physically and emotionally. He felt like the system, the very system that should have been there to help, had failed him.
It's a powerful reminder that we can't judge a book by its cover.
Oh.
Sometimes the people who seem to have it all together, they're battling demons we can't even see.
Yeah. And then you've got this whole other layer, the public reaction. Yeah. People turning him into a symbol, using his case to vent their own frustrations. It's almost like they're so desperate for someone to fight for them, they'll even rally behind a man accused of murder.
It's crucial to remember that there are very real reasons for this anger. People are struggling, they're scared, healthcare costs are out of control, people are drowning in debt, and they see the gap between the rich and the rest of us just getting wider and wider.
But isn't it dangerous to glorify violence like this? Doesn't that just make things worse in the long run?
Of course it does. It's a dangerous path, a very slippery slope. We have to understand where this anger comes from, but condoning violence, it's never the answer. It just creates more pain, more suffering.
So where do we go from here? How do we even begin to make sense of all this tragedy these larger societal issues that it brings up.
I think this case, it's a wake-up call, a real wake-up call. It's a chance for us to look at our systems, our values, and ask ourselves some hard questions. We need to be talking about these things, about healthcare, about inequality, about that feeling of powerlessness that so many people feel.
It's a reminder to look beyond the surface, to really see the people around us, their struggles. We need to talk to each other, really listen, instead of just retreating into our corners and letting anger and division tear us apart.
We can't ignore the warning signs. We can't afford to. Mangini's story, as awful as it is, it's a reminder that we need a better world, a more just world. A world where everyone feels seen, everyone feels heard, a world where tragedies like this one don't happen.
Well, this deep dive. It's been a lot. We've uncovered a lot of information, but we've also uncovered a lot of pain, a lot of questions. We've explored the crime, the evidence, Mangioni's life, the legal battles, the truly strange public reactions. It's a lot to process.
And maybe that's the point. This isn't just about Mangini. It's about all of us. It's about the world we live in, the choices we make, the future we build.
So as you go about your day, we want you to think about this case, to think about the people around you, listen to their stories, be kind, have those tough conversations. Maybe, just maybe, if we all do our part, we can create a world where stories like this one become less and less common. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.